Lewis, how are you doing?
How you all doing?
Oh, great so far.
Pretty good. Lewis, first of all, thank you so much for being with us, and thanks to 80 Level, for sponsoring this presentation that we were about to have. But first and foremost, Lewis, who are you to our people in the chat? Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you here? Hi.
Well, that's a great question. My name is Lewis Cataldi, and I'm the lead evangelist for the Quixel team. And I think today we're going to talk about Quixel and the Quixel ecosystem. So I'll be really happy to share that stuff.
Hell yeah. For those uninitiated, what exactly is Quixel? What is the tool? Or are you going to cover that in a second? Am I getting ahead of things?
Get into it. We're definitely going to get into it. For those who are not familiar with Quixel, who maybe have been living under a rock somewhere, is the company that makes MegaScans. Quixel is part of Epic Games, and Quixel has a library called MegaScans Library, which is over 16,000 photogrammetry-based assets, and Quixel has the mission of scanning the world. And here in a short while, I'm going to get into the MegaScans library, free tools that Quixel offers for making materials, some of the best materials, and access to the MegaScans library, and really what everyone needs to know about accessing this amazing content. Because in a world where content is king, this kind of content is, I think, super helpful in world creation and world building, which with this new kind of idea of the metaverse, making worlds is really exciting for a lot of people in the film industry, automotive industry, and certainly for sure in the game development world.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Pardon. With that out of the way, Lewis, will you ease us into the world of Quixel?
It's not an easing thing. We got to jump in feet first.
Let's do it. Into the cold water we go.
Sure. All right. I guess I need to share some screen stuff, huh?
Mm-hmm. That would be fantastic. And then our studio direction is going to take care of the magic. There we go.
Hey.
Y'all got it there?
Yeah.
We got it.
All right. So we're going to jump into the Quixel ecosystem. Once again, I'm the lead evangelist for the Quixel team. And really just to, let everyone know, Quixel's mission is to enable creators and really to simplify world creation by delivering some of the most amazing content utilizing photogrammetry and 3D scanning. So, with that out of the way, we are committed to capturing the world. We've got teams of people scanning many of the key continents all over the world. And one of the cool things that I've gotten to do recently is join a number of scanning teams. This is actually some of the footage that I captured in the tundra of northern Sweden with a group of people that went out to scan this big old rock up here in the corner, which was pretty awesome, of course, with a bunch of other content out here. Mm. And once again, we're deeply focused on simplifying world creation, and hopefully many people have gotten a chance to download some of the amazing projects that we've uploaded to the Unreal Engine marketplace. Because making open world games, making movies with virtual production environments, we need to put stuff out there, and particularly in the photorealistic realm, using photogrammetry to capture real world objects and distribute them and to make real worlds can be really complicated and hard. Mm. So Quixel has, what we call an ecosystem of tools and products and things that used to be very expensive to access in many ways. One, of course, is the MegaScans library, and then tools to access all of this content. And we're going to dig into these a little bit, for those who are not familiar with this, the MegaScans library, Quixel Bridge, which is a real simple path to get all of this content into all the different digital content creation tools, engines that people use. Quixel Mixer, which takes all of this content and allows you to force multiply it, modify it, make it, if you don't want it to be photorealistic, you can modify it and make it very stylized with Quixel Mixer. Once again, all of this stuff is free, like Bridge and Mixer. And then capturing reality. There's tons of studios out there who are like, well, I like the chair that you have. I like the vase that you have or whatever, the rocks and vegetation. But we want to capture our own stuff. Can you provide us tools to do that? So capturing reality for the longest time was our secret sauce to doing all this work. But now it's become part of Quixel, and we've made it available to everyone else. So what is Quixel MegaScans? Quixel MegaScans is a library of over 16,000 assets available immediately for download. And this is an ever-growing library. Every single day, new content is coming into the MegaScans library from our teams that are scanning all over the world. And it is considered the world's largest library of diverse assets. Once again, over 16,000 assets available to use not only in game engines, but also in many digital content creation tools, of course, like Max, Maya, Blender, Houdini, and all kinds of tools that can access the MegaScans library and use all of this content. And we've got developers using the MegaScans content in games that everyone's playing, films that everyone's watching, and primarily because making content of this type is really, really time consuming. Now, as I mentioned before, Quixel is now part of Epic Games. So one of the really amazing things that happened a couple of years ago when Epic acquired Quixel is that it took the entire MegaScans library and made it available to anyone using Unreal Engine completely for free. And this is crazy, right?
That's fantastic.
Using the MegaScans library prior to Quixel joining Epic was, kind of expensive. You had to pay a monthly subscription fee, and then, you would get certain points that you could go and download a couple of assets. But now, the entire library is available to anyone using Unreal Engine. So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's an ever-growing library of not just 3D assets, but complete tileable surfaces, ready-made plants. And this is something that a lot of people use the MegaScans library for. We have vegetation artists that specifically focus on something that can be a real pain in the keister, right? And going out and scanning plants and all kinds of vegetation is incredibly labor intensive. So we've got very specialized hardware and very specialized individuals that go out and scan all kinds of vegetation and make it available as ready-made 3D assets in the library, but also as atlases that people can use to make all kinds of vegetation in their own engines or whatever the case is. So that's a huge deal, as well as decals and all kinds of different imperfections that people use for stains and drips and all kinds of things. So everything's meticulously categorized, tagged, and calibrated and ready to be used right out of the box, including LODs, including up to 16K textures in the library. So, and then everything can also be exported as EXR. So those people working in the film industry who need 32-bit image data, that can be exported out of the MegaScans library. So that's a big deal for those people working in the film industry. And so one of the questions is why use this content, right? So typically making 3D content is very expensive, right? So those people working in the game industry get used to outsourcing content, But, that could be really expensive. It can also be very labor intensive, right? Particularly with regard to photorealistic content. That stuff just takes a lot of time to make. And getting it right can really be really challenging as well. And then online content resources typically are not always standardized, right? So you may get, particularly trying to build a world, an outdoor world, rocks and vegetation. And by the time you put them together, they're not standardized and they become very inconsistent. And so these worlds become inconsistent. So it's the standardization across an entire biome that can be really valuable in building worlds. And the MegaScans library, in many cases, is captured together as an entire biome. So that consistency makes a huge deal. And once again, as I mentioned, outsourcing can be really cumbersome and labor intensive. I don't know how many studios I've worked with, including studios that I've run, where you go out and spend sometimes millions of dollars on outsourcing just to bring it in-house and kind of do it over again with our team, because it's just not quite 100%. So those are real things. Now, some of the things that are really interesting and then have even gotten better as Quixel has joined Epic Games is the MegaScans library is constantly evolving and increasingly becoming more dynamic. And what I mean by that is that as new tools become available to Quixel, we get to do cooler things. Drone scanning has become a huge part of the library. As you can see here, we've started scanning enormous surfaces. And you can see here we have this drone that's scanning, in this case, a large part of Moab, and we can capture enormous surfaces. So if you go into the library, you can see that we've captured enormous cliffs, large rock surfaces of all kinds, and all kinds of just huge surfaces with drones. So this has really revolutionized the way we capture an entire, once again, ecoregion or biome, because we're not only capturing small rocks, but really enormous sections of an entire cliff face, or kilometers of a whole region. Another thing that can be really an enormous challenge when you are using techniques like photogrammetry is capturing highly reflective surfaces. So, we have a lot of proprietary hardware at Quixel and proprietary scanning techniques. But one of the things that can always be a challenge is when you are trying to scan and put into the library highly reflective surfaces. So one of the things that we've added to the library recently is a whole collection of very reflective surfaces that were almost impossible to capture in the past, unless we refine the process of using lasers to scan them. So this is something that people can look forward to, because there were many content libraries that really did not have a lot of this metallic content in the past, because it just was really difficult to capture.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
Another process that we've really refined and continue to add to is the whole process of capturing modular assets. Now, this is a big workflow that is very typical in a lot of game development, right? So you'll see that when building large structures like these buildings, you may make the entire building, but in many cases, it can be much more effective and efficient to not build an entire building, but to build the components of a building, then allow you to build whatever size building you want. And this is not only true for building, but it can be true for, railings and staircases and sidewalks and streets and any number of things that have repetitive modular components, like you see here with these window sections and roof sections and, tiling tiling anything, right? So this has been, I think, a really interesting revolutionary addition to the MegaScans library, because it allows developers to assemble all different sizes and types of larger section assets based on compartmentalized and component elements. And once again, these things come in the MegaScans library with LODs, level of detail meshes, and different texture resolution textures, so that you can build any number of sizes of cities with these things, and it can be really helpful. We've also improved our ability to generate massive terrains by scanning, 4-kilometer terrain scans.
Oh, wow.
And this can be really helpful when you're building an entire outdoor ground plane or something to that nature. And so you can go into the MegaScans library and grab a whole massive terrain patch. This is a really helpful element as well.
That is incredible.
I also have been talking a fair amount about full biome scans. So typically when we send a team out into the field, they're not just scanning individual elements, but they're evaluating an entire environment, and they're saying, well, what are the key elements that make up this environment? And they're capturing what we call a biome or an ecoregion. So they'll look at, the grass, the rocks, the pebbles. They'll look at all the vegetation, the cliffs, the trees, all the different things that allow a developer to recreate those things with maximum consistency and quality, and provide those in the MegaScans library, so that if someone wants to go and create a desert or, a pine forest or whatever the case might be, they have all the elements in hand, whether it's surfaces, 3D vegetation, or even man-made elements that they can go in and recreate them. And additionally, we're creating highly curated, what we call mega assemblies, where not only are you getting a single asset made available to you, but collections of assets that already belong together, right? So you don't have to put things together necessarily by hand, but you will be able to get from Quixel, a cliff that already comes with a ground plane and rocks and vegetation that belong with that cliff, or whatever the case might be. And so these assemblies are curated collections of assets that already belong together, that make the process of world building much faster and increase the speed of environment creation. Yeah. We've already released a couple of those packs in the Epic Games marketplace. And those people who have downloaded the Valley of the Ancients project in Unreal Engine 5 Early Access have seen how effective they can be to utilize in making large environments. So some of the free tools that are available for accessing the MegaScans library, for instance, is Quixel Bridge, right? So Quixel Bridge makes managing content, particularly the MegaScans assets, much more frictionless process. It's a free download on PC, Mac, and even on Linux. And it basically gives you access to the entire MegaScans library. You sign into it using an ID that you either access through your development studio, or if you have an Epic Games ID, it gives you access to the entire MegaScans library. And so the reasons to use Bridge is because it's a well-organized content management system. It's built for browsing the entire MegaScans library, making it really frictionless. You can browse the entire library, but you can also browse all of the content that you choose to put into it with all the textures and so forth It's got full intelligent search functions and full drag and drop ability directly into tools like Unreal Engine, which make it a lot easier to work with. The standalone version of Bridge can export to all major digital content creation tools, once again, like Max, Maya, Blender, Houdini, and so forth. And when you export to those tools, it makes and creates materials for you. So that can really save a tremendous amount of time. For instance, if you are accessing the MegaScans 3D assets or surfaces, and then pushing them into Unreal Engine, you have a full master material instances that it brings into Unreal Engine and makes the process of accessing your MegaScans assets much, much faster and much easier to work with. And then it also ships with all the plugins that you need for your digital content creation tools and your game engine. So that makes it a lot easier. If you download Bridge, it gives you all the stuff you need to work with your third-party tools or digital content creation tools. So that makes life a little easier. One of the super cool things we did is we added Bridge directly into Unreal Engine 5. So you can open up Quixel Bridge inside of Unreal Engine 5 Early Access, and all the meshes that you find, the 3D meshes, are nanite quality MegaScan assets. So you can drag them directly from Bridge directly into your Unreal Engine 5 scene, and they're nanite quality, which means when we go out in the field and scan something as massive as these rocks, they're incredibly dense meshes. So we have access to ridiculous mesh resolution. And so we can retain that information and use that. Unreal Engine 5 has this new technology called nanite, which is pretty crazy and can give you this just incredible level of visual fidelity. Another really powerful tool that, once again, is absolutely free for everyone to use is called Quixel Mixer. Now, Quixel Mixer combines the power of procedural technology with MegaScans. So the entire MegaScans library is available inside of Quixel Mixer. And then you can use that to easily create photorealistic or stylized materials of any type. And it's super powerful. You can think of it as a, blending Photoshop and, some of the other really powerful material making tools out there on the market. Some of the reasons to use Mixer is because it's absolutely free in perpetuity. No one's ever going to come and ask you, it's not like you get a free trial and then a couple of months later, somebody's like, oh, now come pay us for it. It's free in perpetuity. And it's designed with ease of use right up front. So, there are a lot of tools out there for making really cool materials, but the learning curve is really quite steep. Mixer is really simple to use. It's got a layer system. Anyone who's ever opened up and used Photoshop or any kind of a tool that has layers will be immediately familiar with it. And once again, you can access the entire library and pull from 16,000 assets and remix them instantly. So that's one of the really powerful things, is that you get 16,000 assets and then you can instantly modify them as quickly as you want. And I almost feel like I have to show you a little bit here. Let me see if I give it a second here. It's going to decide to come up. While this opens up, I'll keep showing here. There are hundreds of smart materials, and this is a really important distinction. So Mixer ships with, I think, over 400 smart materials that you can download and utilize, including metals, fabrics, rocks, leathers, woods. And these are really powerful and, once again, completely free to use. and they're all procedural and non-destructive. And so that's one of the key things, is that you can bring in 3D and 2D tileable surfaces in the mixer, do all kinds of procedural workflows on top of them, and then decide to change it because all the workflows are completely non-destructive. And so that's one of the, I think, super cool and powerful things about Mixer, is that whatever you do, you can undo or you can turn off, like a layer, once again, in Photoshop. There's a ton of free learning materials on our YouTube channel about working with Mixer, and it's an ever-expanding tool set with a very simple, minimal UI. So that's another really powerful and simple thing, that it's not, when you get into some of these tools, the user interface can be so complex and overbearing that you open it up and you're like, now what? What do I do? And it can be a little too intimidating at times. So I encourage everyone to check it out and download it, because it's super powerful. And I'm going to keep going here. And if I get a little bit of time at the end, I don't want to run out of time for even Q&A. So we'll maybe show a little bit of it here in a little bit. I'm going to reopen it. Yes, I've got something really special to share with everyone today. And this is a kind of a special announcement. As an evangelist for Quixel, I can tell you that there's almost never a situation where someone hasn't said, hey, when are you guys going to make trees? Well, I'm here to tell you today that we are announcing today the introduction of MegaScan trees. And MegaScan trees are going to be shared as a beta in the Unreal Engine marketplace today, free for everyone to access. And this is a MegaScan tree that you can look at and see what this is all about. This is a whole new level of 3D digital tree. As you can see, that we've taken a tremendous amount of effort to make absolutely stunning. We utilize photogrammetry in a large portion of everything that we're doing to generate these trees. This is a photogrammetry trunk. Of course, we scan all the fronds and leaves using photogrammetry. And then we use a lot of procedural systems to generate tiling, bark, and decoration layers to give you a lot of really interesting features, like all these decorations and knots along the trees. Now, MegaScan's trees are a brand new type of assets. They've never been released before. And they're just a whole new type of asset with a very powerful material system within the Unreal Engine marketplace. They're for free, but they are an Unreal Engine asset type. And so we've spent years really researching how to deliver these trees at a whole new level of fidelity using the techniques that we use to deconstruct and reconstruct a digital tree and to grow trees, really. And so they're absolutely beautiful and stunning. The actual first MegaScan tree that will be released in the beta program is a European black alder tree. And the pack will have 22 unique models of various maturities. So you can see here that there's going to be small trees, saplings of all different types. There's going to be tall, skinny ones, larger, more mature trees. And they're going to be released in various levels of details, all the way from cinematic quality versions to game versions that can be used using lower levels of LODs. We've been able to paint, thousands and thousands of these trees in an Unreal Engine scene. So they're really quite powerful to utilize. including an Unreal Engine imposter version of the tree. So literally by using the imposter, you can paint thousands and thousands of these trees in a scene. The shaders, the materials that we're using for these trees have parameters that allow you to paint seasons and health, and they will work by using a material instance to adjust the sliders. So you can not just have healthy green trees, but you'll be able to paint and have sort of a colder weather tree where the leaves have fallen off, for instance, and you can have your winter scene trees as well. They will all come with a global wind parameter that allows you to change the amount of wind that they are receiving. So you can have these trees in a fairly violent storm, or a mild wind that affects all the vegetation in the scene, which is also very powerful. And over the course of time, we have scanning teams that will be really all over the globe, scanning various types of trees and various species of trees. As we have teams going into different biomes, whether it's beach biomes or mountain regions and so forth, we will be populating more and more trees as we go along. So it's really valuable that as you go to the Epic Games Marketplace and go and download your MegaScan trees, that you provide us feedback and let us know how these are working out for you and your projects and so forth. All the details will be available in the asset pack that you can download from the marketplace as to how to utilize and provide feedback. And when the trees are out of beta, they'll be available through QuickSilver Bridge. So that's a really helpful piece of information so that you can sort of plan in the future how you might be able to utilize Quixel trees, MegaScan trees. So we've had our community already beating on these trees and really seeing how you can use them. So this is one of the scenes from some of our community members building some beautiful scenes with some of our hero trees. Once again, at the highest level of LODs, you can really think about these in really up close cinematic detail, even from a film virtual production detail. And at the lowest level of LODs, you can use them in most game scenarios. So they're really powerful.
It's incredible.
I wanted to bring up really quickly a mixer scene here as well, to come back to this. This is just a 3D asset inside of Mixer. And some of the cool stuff is this is the base asset. And if I hold down my shift key, I can roll the light around here. And I brought in a couple of different smart materials here into Mixer so that we can see what a smart material can do to a scene. And so you'll see that as I expand the layer here in Mixer, I've got different sub layers in here. And if I turn this on, this is a mossy rock smart material that I brought in and applied to this statue. So you can see that procedurally, I've taken, for instance, the moss layer, and the moss layer is really only attaching to the top side of the rock. And, this can actually be modified a certain amount so that there's more or less of the moss that gets applied to the top, of the statue, and which is really kind of cool. And if I hit 9 on my keyboard, you'll get to see here the actual mask and where this moss is actually applying to the top of the statue, which is really kind of cool and interesting. And I can hit 1 and see the PBR mode again. And this is just one smart material. So if I turn that one off, I can turn on a separate smart material. And now this is sort of a ashy rock. And you can see how just by taking these smart materials, you can completely change the characteristic of something like a statue. And this is really a different one called oiled leather. So you can apply that to this statue. And here's old brass. So once again, these are not set in stone. I can go into any one of these and change the way that all of this is being applied. So I can go, for instance, to any one of these sections here and change the contrast that's being applied and really modify the workflow that is going on, because all of these procedures are non-destructive, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's super interesting to see how quickly this adapts and how accurate it is. Like I thought
so
that all these
actually,
textures are really believable.
Absolutely, it's evaluating the surface. And one of the really cool things is that I can go here into the setup and say, well, I want to apply this to a different surface. So if I go in and say, well, what would this look like, for instance, on a completely different surface, I can go in and say, well, let's put it on this Japanese lantern, some completely different asset, and see what it looks like. So now my Japanese lantern is going to come in, and it's going to take on all the different properties of all those different materials. So we'll give it a second here, and you can see that now this old bronze is now applied to the Japanese lantern. Mm-hmm. And I can turn that off and turn on, for instance, the...
this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you say that's procedural, right? Like it's completely generating...
That's correct. Evaluating the surface and applying that to it. So let's turn on, for instance, the old moss here. We'll get rid of some of these other ones. And there's the moss.
Oh, yeah.
You can see, found the moss on top here.
Incredible.
And once again, I can select the moss and hit the 9 key, and you will see how it applies the moss on the very top and finds the top of this asset.
Mm.
Which is pretty cool.
From a texture perspective, would you be able to basically now in this mode go in and, much like weight painting and things like that, be able to manipulate it?
Yeah, absolutely. I can go in here and find the height that we're using and change how much we're actually using to drive that height. So if I want it to be a little higher or lower, I can do it just by changing that. So let me show you very quickly with a new asset here. If I go and grab a new 3D asset, let's go and find something 3D. Let's just grab the same thing. We'll grab the Japanese lantern. So this is the original Japanese lantern. And if I come in here and I grab, for instance, make a new solid layer, let's just make a new solid layer here. So here's a solid layer, and I can make a mask stack. And then I can tell this mask stack to have a position gradient. So if I hit the 9 key on the keyboard, you can see here that I can change the range of this position gradient and go higher or lower. So I can define what height that I'm applying this to. So now if I choose to make this, a particular color, or even change a texture that I want to apply to it, and this can be as if I grabbed a surface. So let's say I grab any surface, this rock, for instance, and I apply that same thing to it, maybe a mask stack to it, and use a position gradient, and I'm going to turn it here. So you can see that I can slide it up so that that rock is just applied at a certain height.
Yeah.
Now, where it gets really powerful is if I take something like this and I apply it to the cavities or something to that effect. So let's grab some damaged old concrete, for instance, which is going to apply it overall. And some of the things that are really powerful is that I can change the scale of something like this. We're using hexaplanar projection so that you'll never see a seam, right? So
that's good.
I can make this smaller or larger. And now if I go in and create a mask stack on this, I can go in and find the cavities for it. And if I hit the 9 on my keyboard, I can see that I can find my default curvature, or I can find the cavities of it. And I can use, once again, the levels to really dig in and find the cavities really tightly. And if I hit the 1 on my keyboard, now it's just going to apply that new texture only into the cavities, and I can invert it so that it actually puts it on the outside if I choose to. So this is what's one of the really powerful things. And I can go back into the actual texture and change the actual colors of that cavity. So you can see that in the cavities, I can make it sort of electric if I choose to, which is really kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
Or I can find another color in the scene and align to that other color. So if I wanted to do something that was like, now this texture is kind of this electric texture on top, that can be really interesting. And you can make, one of the really cool things is that you can take a photorealistic asset inside of Mixer and make it not photorealistic, which I think a lot of people are kind of interested in is, how do you take an asset like this and give it a bit more of a stylized look? You can use this technique to make something very cartoony in many ways.
This is so incredible. Out of the perspective of somebody who would be, let's say, interested in using reality capture, what kind of equipment do you actually need to do proper photogrammatic assets for all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me stop sharing here for a second and we can chat. So it really depends, right? So, questions like that kind of come down to, it depends. It depends on what you're after. You can use reality capture with a phone. And all of it depends on what your output desire is. Now, when we capture things that we want to put into the MegaScans library at a high level of quality, what you'll find in the MegaScans library is that you can download things, 8K textures, up to 16K textures in some cases. And the textures that you can download can range up to, over a dozen texture varieties that you can download for a single asset. And so we have a pretty complicated processing pipeline for different things that we capture. We specifically, for our 3D assets, use a technique called CrossPolarization, because what makes capturing something difficult is when you want to capture something that is very reflective. That can be a real pain to get. So CrossPolarization can help with that. And what CrossPolarization is that the other thing too is lighting conditions when you're capturing something. So what CrossPolarization allows you to do is shoot things with a flash, right? And flash is tough with shiny things. What we're doing is that we have 2 flashes on what we call a flash scanning rig. And the flashes actually have a polarizing gel on top of them. And then our camera, which we use a DSLR camera, a nice Sony DSLR camera, has a polarizing filter on the camera lens.
That's so smart.
So what is happening actually is that light comes out of the flash, and that light beam hits the surface, and the lens is picking up that flash, but it's cross-polarized, which means that we can actually dial the filter at an angle where the light coming out of the flash is negated, and still you're getting the brightness of the light, but not the sharpness of the reflection. So we can actually eliminate the reflection on the surface. Now, that is really helpful when you're using reality capture and you're capturing objects and they have a lot of reflection. But you can do the same process without cross-polarization with a phone or just a DSLR camera. We've got some learning material that we're going to be releasing in 2022 that walks through the entire process of using a reality capture to capture with a phone, capture with a DSLR camera, to capture with a homemade cross-polarizing rig, so that people who want to learn how to capture at a similar level of quality that we are can make their own homemade cross-polarizing rigs, and then use reality capture to process their assets and be able to, if they don't find what they want in the MegaScans library, use reality capture to get it.
Wow, that is so incredible. And honestly, I said that earlier when we saw the trees being now implemented into, or like going into beta, basically from this point forward, and eventually being released. This is such a huge game changer. This is like, I remember just a couple of weeks and months ago when I started a new Unreal project, I've been looking for trees that you would be able to use in a relatively cinematic and photorealistic way, and you pay so much money for good captures or good models. Having that now just at hand's reach and arm's reach is incredible. Like, I cannot imagine being back in university, being a student, and now having that just available. I am so excited to see what projects are going to come out of this. This is huge.
I think when people get their hands on these trees, they're going to be really impressed. We kind of felt the same way that there was. There are trees available in various marketplaces. There are tons of trees in the Epic Games marketplace. But having photogrammetry integrated into the process of assembling trees is also a big game changer.
Yeah.
And also, trees are hard.
Yeah.
They really suck, there's so much chaos in a tree. And so trying to capture that chaos and then trying to capture it using photo-sourced content took us a long time.
I can imagine.
Till Quixel felt confident releasing material to the world and saying, what do you guys think, right? Yeah. And so we sent out the alpha for these trees to some of the best companies in the world and said, what do you guys think? Do these not suck? It's important to get trees right, because we're used to seeing trees. Everyone is used to going, that's a tree. And if you get that wrong, everyone knows right away. How many trees have we all seen? How many games have we played and gone, that's supposed to be a tree, right? And we're like, the suspension of disbelief is really strong right now because we're suspending some serious disbelief. So, we want to make sure that we don't ask our community to have to suspend a tremendous amount of disbelief with this initial. So we're still in beta, and we definitely want some good feedback about the black alder scan tree asset pack that everyone will have access to here. And we really hope that everyone gives us some great feedback and that we see them all over the place, right? Like, that's one of the really cool things about making the entire MegaScans library available to everyone using Unreal Engine is that, you see so much cool content out there and go, yeah, I know that bush, or I know these rocks, or I know, these chairs, or that rope, or all this stuff, and have that familiarity with that content and start seeing it in projects is pretty awesome. So I can't wait to see the trees too.
Big time.
Yeah, thank you so much for showing this to us. But unfortunately, we now have to come to an end.
We do.
We do. It was really interesting getting some insights on Quixel and what you've been doing. And especially the trees. Also, like, wow, I'm impressed as well.
Also, the little live demo. Thank you so much for doing that, Louis.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Cool.
Much love to the Quixel team. And again, thanks, Louis. Thanks, AT Level, for making this happening and for connecting and bringing this basically to our Twitch show and to the people out there. This was huge. Thank you so much. Much love.
Absolutely.